The alien lords called it the Great Hunt, though there was nothing great about it for the prey. High above the forest canopy of Kepler 442b, the golden pleasure craft of the Zephyrian nobility floated like vultures waiting for carrion. Inside the luxurious vessels, beings with crystalline skin and 4 arms sipped fermented essence while watching holographic displays that tracked their quarry below. Marcus Chen crouched behind a fallen log, his breath coming in controlled bursts as he listened to the forest around him. Somewhere in the distance he could hear the terrified screams of other humans as the hunting parties closed in. The Zephyrians had taken 300 humans from the colony ships, promising them new homes on fertile worlds. Instead, they had been transported here to this death world, given basic supplies and told they had a week to survive. The rules were simple and brutal. The humans would be released into the wilderness with minimal equipment. The Zephyrian nobles would hunt them for sport, using advanced technology and weapons that could kill from orbit if they chose. Any human who survived 7 days would be granted freedom, though none ever had in the 2 centuries since the hunt began. Marcus was different from the other colonists. While they were farmers, engineers, and teachers seeking new lives among the stars, he was former military. Staff Sergeant Marcus Chen, 3rd Marine Reconnaissance Battalion, had seen action on 6 different worlds during humanity's expansion into space. When the civilian transport he was traveling on was captured by Zephyrian raiders, he found himself thrust into this nightmare alongside innocent families. The hunting horn echoed through the trees again, closer this time. Marcus checked his equipment one more time. He had managed to fashion a crude bow from flexible wood and salvaged materials from the drop pod. His arrows were sharpened metal fragments, not much against energy shields and plasma weapons, but they would have to do. More importantly, he had his training and 20 years of combat experience. Through the undergrowth, he caught a glimpse of movement. A Zephyrian hunter glided between the trees on a personal hover platform, its 4 arms holding different scanning devices. The alien wore ornate armor that sparkled with embedded gems, treating this hunt like a formal occasion. To the Zephyrians, humans were just another animal species, slightly more intelligent than most but still suitable for sport. Marcus remembered the briefing they had been given before the hunt began. Lord Vextar, the huntmaster, had explained with obvious pleasure how humans had become the most prized quarry in the galaxy. They were clever enough to provide interesting chase, resilient enough to survive for days, and their emotional responses to terror provided excellent entertainment for the noble houses. The alien hunter paused, consulting a device that Marcus assumed was tracking his heat signature or scent. Marcus had tried to mask both by rolling in mud and covering himself with local vegetation, but Zephyrian technology was far advanced beyond human science. Still, his military training had taught him that every advantage, no matter how small, could mean the difference between life and death. Moving with practiced silence, Marcus began to circle around behind the hunter. The Zephyrian was focused on its sensors, confident in its superiority and the protection of its energy shields. It probably had not encountered serious resistance from human prey before. The colonists they usually hunted were civilians with no combat training, easy targets for sport. As Marcus crept closer, he could see other hunters spread throughout the forest. This was obviously a coordinated sweep designed to flush out any remaining humans. In the distance, he could see the smoke from fires where the hunting parties had set up camps, confident that the hunt would be concluded within hours rather than days. The Zephyrian hunter suddenly looked up from its devices, apparently detecting something. Marcus froze, blending into the shadows between 2 large trees. The alien's large black eyes scanned the area methodically, but its gaze passed over Marcus's position without stopping. After a moment, it returned to its instruments. Marcus drew back his improvised bow and aimed at the gap between the alien's helmet and chest armor. The arrow was crude, but at this range it would penetrate flesh if he could find a weak spot. He had studied the aliens during their captivity, noting how their crystalline skin formed natural armor plating in some areas while remaining vulnerable in others. The shot took the Zephyrian in the throat, just below its helmet. The alien made a gurgling sound and toppled from its hover platform, crashing into the underbrush. Marcus was moving before the body hit the ground, rushing to collect the alien's equipment before other hunters could investigate. The Zephyrian's weapons were designed for 4-armed users, but Marcus managed to figure out the basic controls on what appeared to be an energy rifle. More importantly, He found communication equipment that would let him monitor the hunters' coordination. As he worked, he could hear voices calling in the musical Zephyrian language, probably checking on the fallen hunter. Marcus stripped what he could carry and melted back into the forest. He now had superior weapons and intelligence on his enemy's movements. More importantly, he had drawn first blood against beings who considered themselves the apex predators of the galaxy. As night fell over the hunting preserve, Marcus found shelter in a cave hidden behind a waterfall. He could hear the hunting parties setting up defensive perimeters for the night, their artificial lights creating pools of brilliance in the darkness. Tomorrow they would expect to find scattered human survivors hiding in terror, easy prey for their sophisticated hunting techniques. Instead, they would find a predator who had turned their own game against them. Marcus spent the night planning his campaign, studying the captured communication device to learn the hunter's patrol patterns and protocols. By dawn, he would begin his own hunt. The Zephyrians had made one crucial mistake in their arrogance. They assumed that all humans were helpless prey, suitable only for sport and slaughter. They had never encountered a human who had spent his life learning to hunt the most dangerous game of all other humans in warfare. Marcus Chen was no longer running from the hunt. He had become the hunter. Dawn came early on Kepler 442b, with twin suns casting long shadows through the dense forest canopy. Marcus had spent the night studying the alien communication device, slowly deciphering the hunting patterns of his pursuers. The Zephyrians operated in groups of 3 to 5, sweeping predetermined sectors with military precision. They were skilled hunters, but they hunted animals, not soldiers. Through the captured communicator, Marcus learned that 17 hunting parties were spread across the preserve. Each group consisted of minor nobles and their retainers, competing against each other for the prestige of claiming the most human kills. The competition added an element of recklessness to their tactics that Marcus could exploit. Lord Vextar's voice came through clearly on the command frequency, speaking in accented standard human to address his fellow nobles. The morning sweep begins now. Remember, the goal is not merely to kill, but to provide sport. Quick deaths rob us of entertainment. Drive them to exhaustion first. Marcus felt cold rage build in his chest as he listened to the casual cruelty in the alien's tone. These beings treated human suffering as entertainment, prolonging terror and pain for their amusement. His hand tightened on the captured energy weapon as he marked the positions of the nearest hunting group on his mental map of the preserve. 3 Zephyrians were moving through the valley below his cave, their hover platforms gliding silently between the trees. Marcus recognized the formation from yesterday's observations. The lead hunter carried heavy weapons while the other 2 flanked with sensors and capture nets. They expected to find cowering humans, not a coordinated ambush. Marcus had spent hours preparing his first trap. Using salvaged components from the alien equipment and natural materials, he had rigged a series of deadfalls and snares along the game trail the hunters were following. The Zephyrians relied heavily on their technology, scanning for heat signatures and movement patterns. They would not expect mechanical traps that operated without power signatures. The lead hunter paused at the first trap site, its sensors apparently detecting something unusual. Marcus watched from concealment as the alien dismounted its platform to investigate. The moment its feet touched the ground, the counterweight system Marcus had built triggered, bringing down a massive log that crushed the hunter beneath tons of wood and stone. The other 2 hunters reacted with trained reflexes, immediately taking defensive positions while scanning for threats. Their energy shields flickered to life, creating shimmering barriers around their bodies. Marcus waited patiently as they called for backup on their communicators, reporting an equipment malfunction that had killed their companion. When the backup team arrived 5 minutes later, Marcus was ready. He had positioned himself above their landing site with clear fields of fire on all approaches. The captured energy weapon felt strange in his hands, but he had practiced with it during the night, learning its weight and firing characteristics. The first shot took out the lead hunter's hover platform, sending the alien tumbling to the ground with its shields overloading from the impact. The second shot caught another hunter center mass, the energy beam punching through crystalline armor like it was paper. The remaining 3 hunters scattered, trying to find cover while calling frantically for reinforcements. Marcus was already moving, using his knowledge of the terrain to stay ahead of their targeting sensors. He had fought enemies with superior technology before during the colony wars. The trick was to never stay in one place long enough for their systems to lock onto you, and to use the environment to your advantage. The surviving hunters made their first mistake by splitting up to search for him. Marcus tracked the nearest one by following its communications chatter, staying downwind and using natural cover to mask his heat signature. When the alien paused to examine the damaged hover platform, Marcus struck from behind with a salvaged combat knife. Zephyrian crystalline skin was tough, but it had joints and weak points like any armor. The alien died quickly and quietly, unable to call for help before Marcus silenced it permanently. 2 more hunters eliminated, and Marcus now had additional weapons and equipment to work with. The remaining hunting party was calling desperately for backup, reporting that they were under attack by unknown hostiles with advanced weaponry. Marcus smiled grimly as he monitored their communications. They had not yet realized that their equipment was being used against them by a single human survivor. Lord Vextar's response came swiftly over the command frequency. Impossible. The humans have no weapons capable of penetrating our shields. Resume the hunt and stop making excuses for poor performance. Marcus used the confusion to set up his next ambush. The backup teams would converge on the distress signal's location, following predictable approach routes through the terrain. He positioned salvaged weapons at multiple firing positions, creating the illusion of a larger force while maintaining mobility to strike and fade. When the reinforcements arrived, they found a killing field. Marcus had turned their own tactics against them, using superior positioning and crossfire to eliminate targets before they could respond effectively. The energy weapons were devastating at close range, and the hunters' confidence in their shields made them careless about taking cover. By midday, Marcus had eliminated 3 complete hunting parties and captured enough equipment to arm a small military unit. More importantly, he had shattered the hunters' sense of invulnerability. The communications channels buzzed with fearful speculation about organized human resistance and hidden weapons caches. The psychological impact was exactly what Marcus had intended. The Zephyrians had begun this hunt expecting to terrorize helpless prey. Instead, they found themselves being systematically hunted by an enemy that struck without warning and melted away before they could retaliate. Their casual cruelty was being repaid with professional violence that left them confused and demoralized. As the twin suns reached their zenith, Marcus established a temporary base in an abandoned cave system he had discovered during his reconnaissance. He now had enough firepower to outfit a squad, along with communication equipment that gave him complete intelligence on enemy movements. The hunt was no longer going according to the Zephyrians' plan. That evening, Lord Vextar called for a temporary halt to hunting operations. Marcus listened with satisfaction as the huntmaster struggled to explain to his noble companions how they had lost almost 20 hunters to equipment malfunctions and accidents in a single day. The other nobles were demanding answers and beginning to question whether the preserve was truly secure. The seed of doubt had been planted. Tomorrow, Marcus would nurture it into full-blown terror. The second day of the hunt began with confusion and fear among the Zephyrian nobility. Marcus monitored their communications from his hidden cave base, listening as Lord Vextar tried to maintain order among increasingly nervous hunting parties. The loss of nearly 20 hunters in a single day had shaken their confidence, and rumors were spreading through the ranks about human insurgents with stolen weapons. Marcus had used the night to prepare his next phase of operations. He had studied the captured tactical displays and identified the command structure of the hunting expedition. Lord Vexistar commanded from a heavily shielded command vessel that remained in orbit, while his ground commanders coordinated from fortified camps scattered throughout the preserve. Eliminating the ground commanders would leave the hunting parties leaderless and vulnerable. The nearest command post was located in a clearing 3 kilometers from Marcus's position. Intelligence gathered from captured communications revealed that Commander Zixwell, one of Vextar's most trusted subordinates, was coordinating search operations from that location. The camp was defended by automated weapon systems and a full squad of elite guards, but Marcus had advantages they could not anticipate. Moving through the pre-dawn darkness, Marcus approached the command post with the stealth techniques that had kept him alive through 6 different wars. The Zephyrians had established their perimeter according to standard military doctrine, but they were defending against external threats. They had not considered the possibility of infiltration by someone who understood their technology and tactics. The automated defense systems were sophisticated, but they relied on standard threat recognition patterns. Marcus had observed that Zephyrian technology could be confused by certain electromagnetic frequencies generated by their own equipment. Using components salvaged from destroyed hover platforms, he created a crude but effective jamming device that would mask his approach. The first guard died silently, taken down with a captured plasma knife before it could raise an alarm. Marcus stripped the alien's equipment and used its communication codes to gain access to the camp's internal security network. The Zephyrians' reliance on networked systems created vulnerabilities that a skilled infiltrator could exploit. Working his way through the camp's defenses, Marcus eliminated 3 more guards before reaching the command center. Through the transparent walls of the command dome, he could see Commander Zixwell coordinating with hunting parties throughout the preserve. The alien was confident and relaxed, treating the search operations like a routine training exercise. Marcus studied the command center's layout through his captured tactical display. The dome was protected by energy shields that would deflect direct attacks, but the power generators were located outside the main structure. Disabling the generators would drop the shields and leave the command staff vulnerable. The power systems were guarded by automated turrets that tracked movement within their sensor range. Marcus used his knowledge of Zephyrian technology to reprogram one of the captured hover platforms, sending it on a collision course with the generators while he approached from the opposite direction. The turrets focused their fire on the obvious threat, allowing him to reach his objective undetected. When the generators exploded, the command dome's shields flickered and died. Marcus was through the breach before the backup systems could activate, moving with the speed and precision of a professional soldier. Commander. Zixwell barely had time to reach for its sidearm before Marcus cut it down with captured energy weapons. The command center contained detailed intelligence on all hunting operations throughout the preserve. Marcus uploaded the data to his portable equipment while setting demolition charges throughout the facility. When the command post exploded behind him, it would take the hunting parties hours to re-establish coordination. As he withdrew from the destroyed camp, Marcus could hear the panic in the communications channels. The loss of a command post and the death of a senior commander had shocked the Zephyrian forces beyond their ability to rationalize away. Lord Vextar's voice cut through the chatter with barely controlled rage as he demanded explanations from his surviving subordinates. Marcus used the confusion to strike at isolated hunting parties throughout the preserve. With access to their tactical networks, he could predict their movements and set up ambushes with devastating effectiveness. The energy weapons he had captured were designed for Zephyrian physiology, but he had learned to modify their power settings and firing modes to maximize their effectiveness against crystalline armor. By midday, he had eliminated 2 more complete hunting parties and severely damaged a third. The survivors were beginning to group together for mutual protection, abandoning their systematic search patterns in favor of defensive formations. Fear was spreading through their ranks like a virus, infecting even the most experienced hunters with uncertainty. The turning point came when Marcus intercepted communications between the hunting parties and the orbital command ship. The nobles were demanding immediate evacuation, claiming that the preserve had been compromised by an unknown military force. Some were suggesting that the humans had somehow smuggled weapons and trained soldiers into their ranks before the hunt began. Lord Vextar's response revealed the depth of Zephyrian arrogance and their fatal misunderstanding of their situation. Impossible. These are primitive colonists, farmers and engineers with no military training. Continue the hunt according to protocol. Any noble who retreats without cause will face exile from the hunting brotherhood. Marcus realized that the Zephyrians literally could not comprehend what was happening to them. Their society viewed humans as inferior beings, suitable only for labor and sport. The idea that a single human could turn their own hunt against them was so foreign to their thinking that they would rather believe in equipment, failures and accidents than face the truth. This blindness would be their downfall. Marcus had fought enemies who underestimated human capabilities before, and he knew how to exploit their preconceptions. The Zephyrians expected to face panicked prey running in terror through the forest. Instead, they were dealing with a predator who understood their weaknesses better than they understood his strengths. As the second day drew to a close, Marcus had reduced the hunting force from 17 parties to 8 effective units. The survivors were demoralized and scattered, their coordination broken by the loss of their command structure. More importantly, Word of the disasters was reaching other noble houses throughout the Zephyrian Empire. The Great Hunt had been a source of prestige for the nobility, a demonstration of their superiority over lesser species. Now it was becoming a source of embarrassment and fear. Marcus could hear the tension in Lord Vextar's voice as he tried to explain the mounting casualties to his superiors. Tomorrow would bring the third day of what was supposed to be a 7-day hunt. But Marcus had no intention of waiting for the full week to expire. He had learned enough about Zephyrian psychology and tactics to begin the final phase of his campaign. The time had come to take the fight directly to the hunter's leadership and end this barbaric sport forever. The prey had become the predator, and the hunt was about to reach its bloody conclusion. The third day of the hunt began with Lord Vextar facing open rebellion among his noble companions. Marcus listened to the heated arguments over the captured communication channels as he prepared for the most audacious phase of his campaign. Several lesser nobles were demanding immediate evacuation, while others insisted on calling for military reinforcements from the Imperial fleet. Vextar's response revealed the desperate pride that would ultimately destroy him. "We are the premier hunters of the galaxy. To call for military assistance against primitive humans would be a confession of incompetence that would end our standing in the Empire forever. We will complete this hunt and restore our honor." Marcus smiled grimly as he finished assembling his latest creation. Using components from destroyed Zephyrian equipment, he had built what human military engineers called a terror weapon, a device designed not to kill, but to break enemy morale through psychological pressure. The Zephyrians had introduced him to their technology through violent conquest. Now he would show them what human ingenuity could do when motivated by righteous anger. The device was a modified communication transmitter that could override Zephyrian emergency frequencies. When activated, it would broadcast across all hunting party channels simultaneously, carrying a message that would shatter their assumptions about human capabilities. Marcus had learned enough of their language during his captivity to deliver the message in their own tongue. Moving to high ground overlooking the main hunting camp, Marcus activated the transmitter and began his broadcast. His voice echoed across every communication channel in the preserve, cutting through their encrypted frequencies with technical precision that should have been impossible for primitive human technology. "Warriors of the Zephyrian Hunting Brotherhood," Marcus began, his words carefully chosen for maximum psychological impact. "You came here expecting to hunt helpless prey. Instead, you have awakened something far more dangerous. I am Staff Sergeant Marcus Chen, 3rd Marine Reconnaissance Battalion, Terran Colonial Forces. For 20 years, I have hunted the most dangerous game in the universe, other intelligent beings in warfare." The communication channels erupted in shocked chatter as the hunting parties realized they were being addressed directly by their mysterious adversary. Marcus continued his message, watching through captured scopes as Zephyrian warriors looked around nervously, suddenly aware that their enemy could reach them anywhere. "You have made one fatal error in your arrogance," Marcus continued. "You assumed that all humans are the same, weak civilians suitable only for sport. You never considered that some of us are warriors, trained from birth to kill enemies exactly like you. Your hunt ends now. From this moment forward, you are no longer the hunters. You are the prey." Marcus cut the transmission and immediately relocated, knowing that the Zephyrians would attempt to trace the signal's origin. But the damage was done. For the first time, the hunters understood that they were facing a trained human soldier, not a terrified colonist. The psychological effect was everything Marcus had hoped for. Lord Vexistar's voice cut through the panicked chatter, trying to restore order among his forces. "Impossible. Our intelligence indicated no military personnel among the human cargo. This is clearly some kind of deception or stolen equipment." But doubt had been planted, and Marcus nurtured it with surgical precision. Over the following hours, he launched a series of coordinated attacks that demonstrated military planning and execution, far beyond what the Zephyrians expected from their prey. Each strike was carefully calculated to maximize psychological impact while minimizing his own exposure to counterattack. The first target was an isolated hunting party that had separated from the main group to pursue what they thought was a fleeing human survivor. Marcus had left false trails leading the hunters into a narrow canyon, where their hover platforms would be useless and their superior technology negated by terrain. When they entered the kill zone, He was waiting with captured weapons and 20 years of tactical expertise. The ambush was perfectly executed, eliminating the entire hunting party in less than 30 seconds. But Marcus left one survivor alive, wounded but able to communicate. The terrified noble provided a first-hand account of facing a human warrior who moved like smoke and struck like lightning, confirming the worst fears of his companions. The second strike targeted the main camp's supply depot. Zephyrian logistics were sophisticated but predictable, following standard protocols that Marcus had learned to read from captured tactical displays. He infiltrated the depot during the shift change when security was momentarily relaxed, and placed demolition charges throughout the facility. When the supply depot exploded, it took with it not only weapons and equipment, but also the hunting party's medical supplies and emergency rations. The noble hunters found themselves trapped on a hostile world with dwindling resources and a deadly enemy who seemed to anticipate their every move. The psychological pressure was becoming unbearable. Marcus followed up these attacks with a campaign of harassment that kept the hunters in constant fear for their lives. He would appear without warning to eliminate sentries, sabotage equipment, and disappear before they could respond. Each attack was accompanied by evidence of his military training, precision shooting, expert fieldcraft, and tactical innovation that demonstrated human warfare at its most lethal. The breaking point came when Marcus infiltrated the main camp itself during the night watch. Moving like a ghost through their defensive perimeter, he eliminated 3 guards and planted explosive charges in their command bunker before withdrawing undetected. When the charges detonated at dawn, they destroyed the hunting party's coordination center and killed 2 more senior officers. Lord Vextar's composure finally cracked as he surveyed the destruction. Marcus watched through long-range scopes as the Huntmaster raged at his remaining subordinates, demanding explanations that none could provide. The proud nobles who had come here expecting easy sport were now huddled in defensive positions, jumping at shadows and fearing every sound in the forest. The psychological transformation was complete. The hunters had become the hunted, living in constant terror of an enemy they could not see or predict. Their advanced technology meant nothing against an adversary who understood both warfare and their own tactical doctrine better than they did. As the third day ended, Marcus counted his achievements with cold satisfaction. He had reduced the hunting force to less than 30 survivors scattered across multiple camps, broken their command structure, and destroyed their morale. More importantly, he had shattered their fundamental assumptions about human capabilities. The communications channels buzzed with fearful speculation about human military capabilities and secret warrior castes. Some nobles were beginning to question whether the Empire's casual brutality toward humanity might provoke organized retaliation. The seed of doubt about Zephyrian superiority had grown into genuine fear of human potential, but Marcus was not finished. The fourth day would bring an escalation that would transform this hunt from a local disaster into a galactic incident. The Zephyrian Empire needed to learn that humans were not prey animals to be hunted for sport. They were a species capable of extraordinary violence when threatened, and their capacity for warfare was limited only by their willingness to show mercy. Tomorrow, Marcus would demonstrate what happened when that mercy was withdrawn. The fourth day dawned with news that would change the course of the entire hunting expedition. Marcus intercepted communications from the orbital command ship revealing that word of the disaster had reached the highest levels of the Zephyrian Empire. Fleet Admiral Kethron himself was demanding a full report on how a primitive hunting preserve had become a military catastrophe that threatened the Empire's reputation, Lord I. Vextar was trapped between impossible choices. Admitting that a single human had decimated his hunting expedition would destroy his career and bring shame to his family house. But the mounting casualties could no longer be hidden from Imperial oversight. The Huntmaster was beginning to crack under the pressure, his communications becoming increasingly erratic and desperate. Marcus had spent the night preparing for what military strategists called vertical escalation, taking the conflict to a level that his enemies were not prepared to handle. The captured Zephyrian equipment had revealed something that changed the entire strategic situation. The orbital command ship was not just coordinating the hunt. It was recording everything for distribution throughout the Empire as entertainment. The hunting preserve was equipped with thousands of surveillance devices that captured every moment of terror and death for the amusement of Zephyrian society. The recordings were broadcast live to noble houses throughout the Empire, with betting pools and commentary tracks that treated human suffering as sport. The discovery filled Marcus with cold rage that focused his tactical thinking with laser precision. If the Empire wanted a show, he would give them one they would never forget. Marcus had identified the primary communication relay that transmitted the surveillance feeds to the orbital command ship. The facility was heavily fortified and protected by automated defense systems, but it had one critical vulnerability. The Zephyrians had never imagined that their prey might possess the technical knowledge to turn their own surveillance network against them. Working with equipment salvaged from destroyed hunting parties, Marcus built what human engineers called a logic bomb, a program designed to infiltrate and subvert enemy computer systems. His knowledge of Zephyrian technology was limited, but their arrogance had led them to use standardized systems throughout the Empire. The same networking protocols that made their society efficient also made it vulnerable to those who understood the underlying technology. The infiltration took 6 hours of careful work, bypassing security systems and uploading his program into the surveillance network's central processing core. When activated, the logic bomb would do more than disable the cameras. It would turn the entire surveillance system into a broadcast platform under Marcus's control. As night fell over the preserve, Marcus activated his program and began the most audacious psychological warfare operation in human history. Every surveillance feed throughout the hunting preserve suddenly shifted to show a single image: Marcus himself, standing in full battle gear with captured Zephyrian weapons arrayed around him like trophies. "Citizens of the Zephyrian Empire," Marcus began, speaking directly into the camera with the calm confidence of a professional soldier. "You have been watching the systematic torture and murder of my people for your entertainment. You call this sport? We call it genocide. Today you will learn the difference between hunting animals and fighting humans." The broadcast was going out live across the entire Empire, reaching millions of Zephyrian households who had tuned in to watch the latest hunt. Marcus could imagine the shock and fear spreading through their society as they realized that their victims were not helpless prey, but members of a species capable of extraordinary warfare. "For 3 days, I have demonstrated what happens when you mistake human civilians for human warriors," Marcus continued. 67 of your hunters are dead. Your command structure is broken. Your technology has been turned against you. This is not luck or accident. This is what we call warfare. And you have just declared war on humanity." Marcus paused, letting the weight of his words sink in across countless Zephyrian households. He could imagine Lord Vextar frantically trying to cut the transmission, while Imperial officials demanded explanations for this unprecedented security breach. "Your empire has hunted humans for sport for 2 centuries, Marcus said. "You have murdered thousands of innocent people for entertainment. You believe that your technology and superior numbers make you invulnerable to retaliation. Today, I am here to prove you wrong." The final phase of Marcus's message was calculated for maximum psychological impact on Zephyrian society. He activated holographic displays showing detailed technical schematics of captured alien equipment, demonstrating human ability to understand and replicate their technology. The implications were clear. If humans could reverse engineer Zephyrian weapons in a matter of days, what could they accomplish with years of preparation? "I am Staff Sergeant Marcus Chen, but I am not unique among my people," Marcus concluded. "Humanity has produced billions of warriors over our history. We have fought wars that would terrify your nightmares. We have survived extinction events that would have destroyed your civilization. You have awakened something that should have been left sleeping." Marcus cut the transmission and immediately began moving to a new position. The response would be swift and overwhelming, as every available Zephyrian force converged on his location. But the damage was done. The broadcast had reached every corner of the Empire, carrying a message that would fundamentally alter the galactic balance of power. Within hours, the communication channels erupted with panicked reports from Imperial command centers throughout the galaxy. The broadcast had triggered something the Zephyrian leadership had never anticipated: a empire-wide psychological crisis as their citizens realized that humanity was not the helpless prey species they had believed. Fleet Admiral Keithron's voice cut through the chaos with barely controlled fury as he addressed Lord Vextar directly. You incompetent fool. Do you realize what you have done? This broadcast has reached every major power in the galaxy. The Andromedan Republic is already mobilizing their fleets. The Stellar Confederacy is demanding an explanation. You have turned a simple hunting expedition into a potential galactic war. Marcus listened to the Admiral's tirade with grim satisfaction. The psychological impact of his broadcast was spreading far beyond the Zephyrian Empire. Every alien civilization that had dismissed humanity as primitive would now be re-evaluating their assumptions. Every potential enemy would be wondering what other capabilities humans had hidden from galactic view. But the immediate tactical situation was becoming increasingly dangerous. Imperial reinforcements were pouring into the system, including military units equipped for actual warfare rather than sport hunting. Marcus had perhaps hours before overwhelming force would be brought to bear against him. The time had come for the final phase of his campaign, a confrontation that would determine not just his own fate, but the future relationship between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. The hunt was about to become something far more significant than anyone had anticipated. Marcus checked his weapons one final time and began moving toward the orbital launch facility where Lord Vextar's personal transport was stationed. If he was going to send a message that would resonate throughout the galaxy, he needed to deliver it personally to the architect of this barbaric sport. The final hunt was about to begin, and this time, the prey would be waiting for the predator. The orbital launch facility stood like a technological monument in the center of the hunting preserve, its gleaming towers reaching toward the stars where the Zephyrian command ships waited in perfect formation. Marcus observed the complex through captured surveillance equipment, studying the defensive arrangements that protected Lord Vextar's personal headquarters. The facility was a fortress designed to withstand military assault, protected by energy shields, automated defense turrets, and an elite guard force drawn from the Empire's finest warriors. Under normal circumstances, a single soldier attempting to breach such defenses would be committing elaborate suicide. But Marcus had spent 4 days demonstrating that normal circumstances no longer applied. The Imperial reinforcements had arrived during the night, transforming the preserve from a hunting ground into an active war zone. Military dropships descended from orbit, carrying fresh troops and heavy weapons, while orbital bombardment platforms locked targeting systems onto suspected human positions. Fleet Admiral Kethron had clearly decided that the situation required overwhelming force, rather than continued hunting games. Marcus monitored the military communications with interest, noting the fear and uncertainty in the commanders' voices. These were professional soldiers rather than sport hunters, but they were facing an enemy whose capabilities they did not understand. The psychological impact of his empire-wide broadcast had shaken Zephyrian confidence at every level of their society. The broadcast had also triggered responses from across the galaxy that the Empire had not anticipated. Marcus intercepted diplomatic communications revealing that multiple alien civilizations were demanding explanations for the hunting program. The Andromedan Republic had formally protested the treatment of humans as sport prey, while the Stellar Confederacy was threatening economic sanctions against Zephyrian trade routes. More ominously for the Empire, intelligence reports suggested that human colonial governments throughout the galaxy were beginning to coordinate their responses to Zephyrian aggression. The isolated colonial settlements that had seemed like easy prey were apparently part of a larger network with capabilities that had remained hidden from galactic view. Lord Vextar's voice cut through the military chatter with increasing desperation as he tried to coordinate the response to Marcus's campaign. The Huntmaster was trapped between the impossible demands of his superiors and the tactical reality of facing an enemy who had consistently outmaneuvered every force sent against him. All units converge on the launch facility, Vextar commanded. The human terrorist must not be allowed to escape this planet alive. Our very survival as a species depends on containing this crisis before it spreads further. Marcus smiled grimly at the alien's choice of words. The transformation from sport prey to terrorist revealed how completely the psychological balance of power had shifted. The hunters who had come here, expecting easy entertainment, were now fighting for their civilization's survival. The approach to the launch facility required crossing 2 kilometers of open terrain, covered by overlapping fields of fire from defensive positions. Marcus had studied the facility's plans through captured intelligence, identifying vulnerabilities in its defensive systems that could be exploited by someone with intimate knowledge of Zephyrian technology. The key was timing and misdirection. Marcus had spent the morning preparing a series of diversionary attacks throughout the preserve, using salvaged equipment to create the impression of multiple human resistance cells operating in coordination. When the diversions triggered simultaneously, they would draw defensive forces away from the launch facility while masking his real approach. The first diversion was a massive explosion at the abandoned supply depot, where Marcus had planted delayed charges in the wreckage. The blast sent a fireball hundreds of meters into the air, immediately drawing the attention of orbital surveillance systems. Emergency response teams rushed toward the explosion site, reducing the facility's defensive coverage. The second diversion was a coordinated assault on 3 separate outposts, using automated weapon systems that Marcus had reprogrammed to fire on Zephyrian positions. The attacks were obviously diversions to any experienced commander, but they created enough chaos to fragment the enemy's response and keep their forces dispersed. While the Zephyrians struggled to respond to multiple apparent threats, Marcus approached the launch facility through a maintenance tunnel system that he had discovered in the captured technical schematics. The tunnels were designed for automated repair systems rather than security, creating a blind spot in the facility's otherwise comprehensive defenses. The infiltration required 6 hours of careful movement through cramped passages filled with maintenance equipment and utility lines. Marcus moved with the patience of an experienced soldier, knowing that haste would trigger detection systems and alert the guards above. Every meter of progress brought him closer to a confrontation that would determine the future of human-Zephyrian relations. The tunnel system emerged in the facility's main power distribution center, where massive generators supplied energy to the defensive shields and weapon systems. Marcus studied the engineering displays with growing excitement as he realized the opportunity that lay before him. Disabling the power grid would not only drop the facility's defenses, but also trap Lord Vextar's transport ships on the ground. Working with tools salvaged from destroyed Zephyrian equipment, Marcus began the delicate process of sabotaging the power distribution network. The systems were protected by multiple redundancies and safety protocols, but his knowledge of Zephyrian technology allowed him to bypass the most critical safeguards without triggering immediate alarms. The power grid failed in a cascade of overloading circuits and exploding transformers that plunged the entire facility into darkness. Emergency lighting flickered on moments later, but the defensive shields were down and the weapon systems were offline. Marcus had created a window of vulnerability that he intended to exploit to its fullest potential. Alarms began wailing throughout the complex as security forces realized that they were under direct attack. Marcus could hear Lord Vextar's voice over the emergency communication system, screaming orders at subordinates, who were struggling to understand how their impregnable fortress had been compromised from within, moving through the darkened corridors with night vision equipment taken from dead hunters. Marcus began the final phase of his campaign. The time for stealth and misdirection was over. Now came the direct confrontation that would send a message echoing across the galaxy about the price of hunting humans for sport. Lord Vextar waited in his command center, surrounded by elite guards and protected by personal shields that could deflect most weapons. But Marcus had not come here to engage in a conventional firefight. He had come to deliver a lesson in human warfare that the Zephyrian Empire would never forget. The final hunt was about to begin, and this time, there would be no question about who was predator and who was prey. The command center doors exploded inward in a shower of molten metal and superheated plasma as Marcus breached the final barrier between himself and Lord Vextar. The Zephyrian Huntmaster stood frozen behind his command console, his forearms trembling as he faced the human who had single-handedly destroyed his hunting expedition and threatened his entire civilization. Around the chamber, elite guards raised their weapons with trained precision, but Marcus was already moving with the fluid grace of a predator who had studied his prey for days. The captured energy weapons in his hands spoke with deadly accuracy, punching through crystalline armor and personal shields with devastating effect. Years of combat experience compressed into seconds of perfect violence. When the last guard fell, Marcus stood alone with Lord Vextar in the command center that had coordinated the systematic murder of thousands of humans. The aliens' large black eyes reflected terror that Marcus recognized from his own people's faces during the initial moments of every hunt. The psychological symmetry was perfect and intentional. "Impossible," Vextar whispered, his musical voice breaking with disbelief. "You are just one human, one primitive soldier against the might of the Empire. This cannot be happening." Marcus approached the command console where surveillance feeds from across the galaxy showed the chaos that his broadcast had triggered. Riots were breaking out in Zephyrian cities as citizens demanded explanations for their government's policies toward humanity. Military commands throughout the Empire were receiving emergency mobilization orders as the leadership struggled to contain a crisis that threatened their very survival. "You made one mistake," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying the cold certainty of absolute victory. "You thought humans were animals. We're not. We're something much more dangerous. We're warriors who remember every injustice and repay every cruelty with compound interest." Vextar's personal communication device erupted with frantic messages from Fleet Admiral Kethron and other Imperial commanders. Marcus could hear the panic in their voices as they struggled to comprehend how a single human had brought their civilization to the brink of galactic war. The hunt that was supposed to demonstrate Zephyrian superiority had become proof of human capabilities. Marcus activated the command center's galactic communication array, knowing that this final message would reach every corner of known space. The Zephyrian Empire's own communication network would carry his words to allies and enemies alike, ensuring that the lesson of the hunt would resonate throughout the galaxy. "This is Staff Sergeant Marcus Chen addressing all sentient civilizations," Marcus began, his image broadcast across 1,000 worlds. 4 days ago, the Zephyrian Empire began what they called the Great Hunt, expecting to slaughter 300 human civilians for sport. Today they face the consequences of mistaking mercy for weakness. Behind him, Lord Vextar collapsed into his command chair as the weight of his failure crushed his proud spirit. The alien who had orchestrated the torture and murder of countless humans now faced the prospect of becoming a historical footnote. The being whose arrogance had awakened human military potential. "For 2 centuries, the Zephyrian Empire has hunted my people like animals," Marcus continued, his words reaching diplomatic channels throughout the galaxy. "They believed that superior technology made them invulnerable to retaliation. They were wrong. Today I have demonstrated what happens when humans are forced to fight for their survival." The tactical displays around the command center showed Imperial fleets throughout the galaxy going to emergency alert status as the implications of Marcus's message sank in. The hunting program had been a closely guarded secret known only to the noble houses. But now the entire galaxy was learning about 2 centuries of systematic genocide disguised as sport. Marcus turned to face Lord Vextar directly, knowing that billions of beings throughout the galaxy were watching this confrontation. The alien's terror was visible in every line of his crystalline features as he faced the human who had become the symbol of his civilization's deepest fears. "You hunted us for sport," Marcus said, his voice carrying across space to every world in the galaxy. "You tortured and killed innocents for entertainment. You treated human suffering as a source of amusement. Now you will learn that humans have long memories and longer reach than you ever imagined." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Communication channels throughout the galaxy erupted with diplomatic protests, trade embargo announcements, and military mobilization orders. The Andromedan Republic formally severed diplomatic relations with the Zephyrian Empire. The Stellar Confederacy announced economic sanctions that would cripple Zephyrian trade routes. Even traditionally neutral civilizations were condemning the hunting program as an affront to galactic civilization. But the most significant response came from humanity itself. Marcus intercepted communications revealing that human colonial governments throughout the galaxy were coordinating their actions for the first time in decades. The scattered settlements that had seemed isolated and vulnerable were apparently part of a vast network that had remained hidden from alien observation. "Fleet." Admiral Kethron's voice cut through the chaos with a desperate offer of negotiation. "Human warrior, we are prepared to discuss terms for ending this crisis. The hunting program will be terminated immediately. Reparations will be paid to surviving human settlements. We seek only to restore peace between our civilizations." Marcus smiled coldly as he listened to the alien's words. The transformation from arrogant predator to desperate supplicant was complete, but the lesson needed to be burned into galactic memory permanently. The time for negotiation ended when you began hunting my people for sport, Marcus replied, his words broadcast across the galaxy. Today begins a new era in human-alien relations. We are no longer prey to be hunted or slaves to be exploited. We are a warrior species that has been patient too long. The final moment came when Marcus delivered the ultimatum that would reshape galactic politics for generations. Standing over the broken form of Lord Vextar, he spoke words that would echo through history. The hunting of humans ends now and forever. Any civilization that targets my people for exploitation or sport will face the full fury of human warfare. We have shown restraint for centuries because we valued peace. That restraint should not be mistaken for inability. Today you have seen what one human warrior can accomplish. Tomorrow you may face millions. Marcus cut the transmission and stepped back from the command console. Around the galaxy, alien civilizations were absorbing the implications of his message while their leaders struggled to formulate responses to this unprecedented crisis. The balance of galactic power had shifted fundamentally in the space of 4 days. Lord Vexistar looked up at Marcus with eyes that reflected the death of everything he had believed about Zephyrian superiority. "What happens now?" the alien whispered. Marcus considered the question as he surveyed the command center that had coordinated so much suffering. Outside, he could hear the approach of rescue shuttles from human colonial fleets that had apparently been monitoring the situation from the beginning. The hunt was over, but its consequences would reshape the galaxy for generations to come. "Now," Marcus said quietly, "you learn to live in a galaxy where humans are no longer prey. The hunt is finished, but the reckoning has just begun." The great hunt had ended not with the slaughter of human prey, but with the birth of a new galactic order. The species that had been dismissed as primitive colonists had revealed themselves as something far more dangerous. Warriors who remembered every injustice and possessed the capability to exact terrible vengeance for crimes against their people. The galaxy would never make the mistake of underestimating humanity again.